Have you ever met someone who, in just seconds, changed your destiny forever? Because I never imagined that a barefoot boy at the border would make me cross into a place I had sworn I'd never dare to go. Stay with me until the end, because this story is one you won't be able to let go of. And before we begin, I invite you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Here we share real road experiences that get under your skin. My name is Julia Vargas, although in the delivery driver's circle, everyone knows me as La Loba. Not because I'm fierce with my coworkers, on the contrary, I'm one of those who always lends a hand, but because I learned to move alone in a world that almost always feels like a forest full of traps. I've spent 12 years traveling highways, from the smallest towns to the most heavily guarded border crossings. Many think this job is just about loading and delivering, but every package I carry holds a story. Every route is a gamble against time, exhaustion, and sometimes even against life itself. I drive a white delivery van with the blue logo of the company, Flecha del Norte. Nothing glamorous, but inside that cabin, I carry my world, a couple of photos of my daughter, a notebook with notes from each trip, and a small figure of St. Christopher stuck to the dashboard, a gift from my mom. That July morning, my eyes were heavy from not sleeping well, but my mind was clear. I had to deliver in Nogales before noon. The sun was just starting to paint the dry hills orange, and in the silence of the road, the only sounds were the roar of my engine and the soft thud of potholes. I had left Hermosillo a few hours earlier, carrying a load of home appliances to drop off at a warehouse near the border. The air smelled of warm earth, even though it was still early. I passed through a lonely stretch, where the desert seemed infinite and the cacti stood like silent guardians. That's where I saw him. At first, I thought it was a mirage. You know, those shimmering reflections that sometimes form on the hot pavement and make you swear you saw water. But no. The figure was there, still, thin, with one arm raised. I braked hard, as if some invisible force had taken control of my feet. It was a boy. A kid no older than 10, standing at the side of the road, barefoot, his clothes dusty and torn. He wore a t-shirt that had once been blue, but the color was barely visible now, and pants that were far too big for him. He limped as he walked toward me, and each step seemed to hurt because his feet were covered in wounds and scabs. "Good morning, ma'am. Can you give me a ride?" he said, his voice steady but heavy with fear. I looked at him through the window, unsure of what to do. After so many years working in that area, I knew the risks well: assaults, scams, traps. It wasn't uncommon for children to be used to lure the unsuspecting. A part of me screamed to drive away, to leave him behind. But another part stopped at his eyes. Black, deep, bad. Like someone who had already seen too much. "Where's your family, kid?" I asked, still not opening the door. "My dad's waiting for me in Nogales. He's on the other side, in Arizona. I just need to get there. Please." I looked around. Nothing. Just desert and silence. Not a single car, not a single suspicious shadow. The heat was starting to press down, and I knew leaving him there meant condemning him to be swallowed by the sun. I took a deep breath, as if in that lungful of air, I was exhaling my last doubt. "What's your name?" I asked. "Miguel, ma'am. Miguel Angel." He nodded so seriously it seemed like he had rehearsed that introduction. That was the moment a knot formed in my throat, because he reminded me of my daughter. The same age, the same way of trying to sound grown-up while still being just a child. I opened the passenger door. "Get in, Miguel. But if this is a trap, let me be clear, I'm not an easy target." He nodded and climbed in with an awkward little jump. Once inside, I noticed he was trembling, not from cold but from nerves. His smell told me he hadn't bathed in days. His hands were dirty, and his feet, covered in scars, squeezed at my heart. "Thank you, Mrs. Loba," he whispered, as if he already knew my nickname. I couldn't help but laugh. And at the same time, a shiver ran through me, because even though he looked like a defenseless child, something in his words and his gaze told me this trip was going to change everything. I started the van again, the roar of the engine breaking the uncomfortable silence that hung between us. The boy sat with his hands clenched on his knees, staring straight ahead, as if he didn't want to look at me or at anything we were leaving behind. "Are you hungry?" I asked, trying to soften the mood. Miguel glanced sideways at me, those big eyes seeming to analyze every word before responding. Then, he nodded timidly. "In that backpack, I have a sandwich and an apple. Take whatever you want." It took him a few seconds to reach out, as if he were afraid it might be a trap. When he finally grabbed the sandwich, he devoured it in quick bites, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. It hurt to watch him eat like that, with both desperation and shame. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" I asked softly. Since 2 days ago, ma'am. I walked a lot. And I hid a lot too." His answer hit me hard. I knew what hiding meant in those lands. Cartels, coyotes, lost migrants, corrupt cops. Anyone could be a threat. I stayed silent for a moment, glancing at him out of the corner of my eye while he bit the apple down to its core. There was something strange about him. It wasn't just the hunger or the exhaustion. It was the way he looked at everything, as if he were analyzing the road, the trees, even the position of my rearview mirror. As if he weren't just a lost kid. "And your mom? Where is she?" I asked suddenly. He lowered his gaze. He didn't answer. He stayed silent, fiddling with the apple seeds. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," I added quickly, not wanting to pressure him. "I just want to know if someone besides your dad is waiting for you." Several long seconds passed before he spoke. "No, ma'am. Just my dad. He told me that if I managed to make it to Nogales, everything would be fine." The way he said it didn't sound like a child's hope.
No.
It was almost like an order engraved in his mind. Something about it made me frown. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to stop asking questions, to just focus on my route and leave it at that. But another part, the one that had always saved me on the road, told me there was something behind this boy's story. Something that didn't fit. Kilometers later, the sun was beating down hard, and the desert stretched endlessly. I kept the windows rolled down to let some air in, even if it was hot. Suddenly, Miguel spoke. "Aren't you afraid, ma'am?" I glanced at him. "Afraid of what?" "Of driving alone around here. Everyone says it's dangerous. That people disappear." His words sent a chill down my spine. Not because of what he said. I already knew that all too well, but because he said it like someone who had already seen it, not like someone repeating a rumor. "Of course I'm afraid, Miguel," I answered honestly. "The difference is, I learned how to handle it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here." He gave a faint smile, one that looked more sad than happy. Then he went quiet again. A few kilometers later, I stopped at a small gas station. I needed to fill up the tank before the last stretch to Nogales. I went to pay, and when I came back, I saw him. Miguel was discreetly rummaging through the glove compartment. I froze. He lifted his head abruptly, startled, his eyes wide open. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though inside, my distrust was already boiling. I wasn't doing anything, ma'am. I was just looking for a piece of paper to draw on. I'm sorry." His hands were trembling. He slammed the glove compartment shut and moved aside. I stared at him in silence for a few seconds. There were two options: believe him, or accept that this boy wasn't as innocent as he seemed. I started the van again, and we continued down the road. But now, I didn't just glance at him, I watched him. And deep down, one thought kept circling in my mind. Who was Miguel, really? The road to Nogales felt endless. The heat inside the van was becoming unbearable, but I didn't want to roll the window down any further. There was something about the boy's silence that unsettled me, as if every unspoken word was an extra weight pressing down on the air. I tried to distract myself by turning on the radio. An old Rocío Dúrcal song came through the speakers, but even that couldn't relax me. Miguel was hunched in his seat, staring at the floor of the van. His hands were pressed tightly between his legs, and his breathing was fast. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded without looking at me. I kept driving. A few kilometers later, on a stretch where the road was completely deserted, I decided to break the silence. "Hey, Miguel, What's in that backpack? Can I see it? The boy reacted as if I had read his mind. He clutched the black bundle between his feet, hugging it against his chest. They're my things, ma'am. Just clothes. And a photo of my dad. His voice was steady, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Relax. I'm not trying to take it from you. I need to be sure you're not carrying anything dangerous. You understand I have to look out for myself, too. There was a tense silence. For a moment, I thought he was going to refuse. But finally, slowly, he handed me the backpack. I placed it on my lap and opened it. Inside, there was a pair of dirty socks, a wrinkled t-shirt, a piece of stale bread wrapped in paper, and at the bottom, a sealed envelope taped shut. The envelope was heavy, too heavy to be just papers. What's this? I asked, lifting it. Miguel swallowed hard and lowered his head. It's for my dad. They told me to take care of it, to never open it. I studied him. My instincts screamed there was something more than just a letter inside. The envelope was stiff, almost as if there were folded bills inside or, worse. Miguel, who gave this to you? The boy took a long time to answer. When he finally spoke, he did it in a whisper. Some men, at the bus terminal. They said if I brought it to Nogales, my dad would be proud of me. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't the first time I'd heard stories like this. Kids used as mules, sent to the border carrying packages they should never touch. I gripped the steering wheel with one hand and handed the backpack back with the other. Listen, Miguel. If we're going to keep going together, I need you to be honest with me. That envelope, it could put both of us in danger. Do you understand? He looked at me, and for the first time on this trip, I saw him on the verge of tears. I didn't want to, ma'am. But they said if I didn't, I'd never see my dad again. A knot in my throat made it hard to breathe. That boy was trapped in a game far bigger than him. And I, without meaning to, had stepped right into it too. I looked at the road ahead. Nogales was getting closer with every kilometer. But now, instead of relief, I felt like we were driving straight into the wolf's mouth. A cargo truck sped by in the opposite lane, kicking up a cloud of dust. The roar made me jump in my seat, and Miguel curled up, hugging the backpack like it was the only thing he had in the world. I took a deep breath. I had to decide. Leave him there, to his fate? Or go with him to the end, knowing I was getting myself into trouble I might not get out of? One thing was certain. My life, from that moment on, would never be the same. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every kilometer felt like a dangerous gamble. The envelope inside Miguel's backpack was like a ticking time bomb, and I was driving straight into it. But leaving him there wasn't an option. I couldn't. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye, curled up, arms wrapped tightly around that backpack as if it truly held his entire life. That's when I knew that, even if it got me into trouble, I was going to take him as far as I could. All right, Miguel, I said firmly, as if trying to convince myself. I'm not going to leave you. But promise me you'll tell me everything you know. Anything, even if it seems small to you. He nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I promise, Mrs. Loba. The highway stretched out before us, straight, endless. The heat made the air shimmer, and in the distance, only low mountains and patches of cacti were visible. Suddenly, in the rear-view mirror, I spotted lights approaching fast. A federal patrol. My heart skipped a beat. The truck followed behind me for a few minutes, as if evaluating me. I felt the pressure of those flashing lights burning into my back. Miguel curled up even more in his seat, his breathing turning anxious. Relax, I whispered to him, though I wasn't relaxed at all myself. Nothing will happen if we have nothing to hide. But we did. That envelope was enough to ruin my life. The patrol switched on its siren for a second. A short sound, barely a warning. Then they turned off the lights and stayed behind. I swear I could feel the officer's gaze fixed on me, even from inside their vehicle. What do we do, ma'am? Miguel asked, his voice trembling. The same thing I always do. drive straight. If they stop me, they stop me. I'm not afraid. My words sounded confident, but deep down, my stomach was burning. The patrol got closer, almost touching my bumper. I kept my speed steady, avoiding the rearview mirror too much so I wouldn't give away my nerves. 5 minutes of pure hell. And then, without warning, they sped up and passed me. The roar of their engine thundered in my ears as I watched them disappear up ahead. I exhaled the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Miguel also let out a loud sigh, as if he'd been holding his too. They were going to stop us. I know it, he muttered. Well, they didn't, I replied, trying to sound calm. But deep down, I knew the truth. They had sniffed us out. And it was only a matter of time before someone else did too. We kept going. The sun was at its highest point, burning everything with fury. My thoughts were a whirlwind, scrambling for an escape. Suddenly, on a stretch of highway where there was nothing but dust and rocks, I saw another vehicle in the rearview mirror. This time, an old truck, windows tinted. No front plates. And worse, it had been behind us for minutes, always keeping the same distance. It wasn't a patrol. It wasn't a normal car. Miguel, I said softly, without looking at him. Do you know them? The boy turned his head just slightly to look. He went pale. Yes, he whispered, almost voiceless. It's them. A chill ran down my spine. Whoever they were, they knew what Miguel was carrying. And they weren't going to let him go so easily. Sweat ran down my forehead, but it wasn't just from the desert heat. That truck was still there, behind us, stuck like a dark shadow that refused to let us go. I clenched my teeth. It wasn't the first time someone had followed me on the road. 12 years delivering across these lands had taught me to distrust everything. Fake patrols, cars with altered plates, guys who tried to force you to the shoulder to rob you. But this time wasn't about me, nor about a simple robbery. This time, there was a child in the middle. Miguel listened to me carefully. My voice came out firm, almost like an order. No matter what happens, you do not let go of that backpack. Understood. The boy nodded, hugging it so tightly his knuckles turned white. The engine of the old truck roared behind us. They sped up, closing the distance. I pressed the accelerator too. My delivery van wasn't built for speed, but I knew the road like the back of my hand. And on these lonely highways, knowing every curve could mean the difference between living or dying. The speedometer climbed. Hot air blasted in through the windows, buzzing in my ears. Miguel was pressed against the seat, his eyes wide with terror. The truck behind me made a sudden move, as if trying to overtake me. No, not with me you won't, I muttered to myself, feeling adrenaline surge through my veins. Up ahead, I spotted a dirt road turnoff, barely marked by a rusty sign. It was a path few used, full of rocks and dust. But I knew it. I'd taken it more than once whenever I needed to avoid checkpoints. Without thinking twice, I jerked the wheel and veered onto the dirt road. The truck behind hesitated for a second, but then followed. Dust rose in a thick cloud, blinding us both. I used that to my advantage. Dropped a gear and gunned it, dodging rocks and holes like the van was part of my own body. Miguel clung to the seat and his backpack, trembling. Hold on tight, Miguel. This is just getting started. The road narrowed between dry bushes. Every curve was a trap. The truck behind stayed relentless, kicking up a cloud so dense I could barely see its lights. Then I heard a sharp crack. Bang. The unmistakable sound of a gunshot. My heart leapt into my throat. A second later, another shot slammed into the back panel of my van. Señora Loba. Miguel screamed, shrinking into himself. Get down, I ordered, instinctively ducking my head while keeping control of the wheel. The engine roared, tires kicking up stones that hammered the undercarriage. I knew I couldn't keep running forever. I needed a plan, something to give me the upper hand. And then I saw it. A small concrete bridge crossing a dry riverbed, just ahead. The road curved sharply right before it. If I took that turn fast enough, I could make the truck behind lose control. Miguel, Whatever happens, don't scream. Trust me." The boy looked terrified but nodded. I floored the accelerator and dove into the curve. The van leaned hard, tires screeching against the rocks, the whole vehicle shaking violently, but I managed to control it. In the rearview mirror, I saw the black truck following me in. They were going too fast. The dust blinded them. They turned too late. The crash was brutal. The vehicle slammed into the concrete barrier of the bridge and shot off into the dry riverbed, kicking up a massive cloud of dust that swallowed everything behind us. I kept going, not slowing down, not looking back. Only when we were several kilometers away did I ease off the gas. My heart was pounding like a drum. Miguel was pale, his breathing ragged. "Are they dead?" he asked in a faint voice. "I don't know. And I don't want to know." Silence. Only the tired roar of my engine and the rattling of stones under the tires. "But one thing I do know, Miguel," I said, my voice rough. "This is just the beginning. And now, we're on the radar of some very dangerous people." The boy didn't respond. He just clutched the backpack tighter against his chest, as if he knew that what he was carrying was a weight far bigger than him. The engine of my van hummed tiredly after the chase. Dust still hung in the air, sticking to the windshield and to Miguel's hair, who remained silent, hugging his backpack as if it were the only thing keeping him alive. I was breathing heavily but tried not to show it. The dirt road led us to a turnoff I knew well. It was a forgotten path, one of those used only by farmers and the occasional delivery driver who, like me, had learned to move where no one else dared to go. After a few kilometers, a small settlement appeared in the distance, a tiny border town, with dirt streets and unpainted brick houses. Skinny dogs lay in the shade, and a couple of old bicycles leaned against the wall of the corner store. I slowed down and stopped in front of the town's gas station, a rusty pump with a faded sign that barely read, "Service." "We're going to stop here for a while," I told Miguel. "I need to think." He nodded without arguing. We got out of the van. The heat hit like hammer blows, and the air smelled of dust and gasoline. An older man, wearing a straw hat and a gray mustache, slowly came out of the booth. He looked at me with distrustful eyes, as if he knew it wasn't a good idea to say too much to strangers. "Fill it up?" he asked curtly. "Yes, please," I replied, trying to sound calm. While the old man filled the tank, Miguel and I walked into the little store next door. The ceiling fan spun lazily, barely moving the hot air. I bought 2 bottles of water and some cookies. Miguel grabbed them instantly, eating as if there were no tomorrow. I watched him, while at the same time keeping an eye on the door. Every person who came in or passed by outside looked suspicious to me. "Miguel," I murmured, leaning closer to him, "I need you to tell me the truth. Does your dad know what you're carrying?" The boy lowered his gaze. "I don't know. They just told me he'd be waiting for me in Nogales. That I'd be safe there." "Who's they?" "The same ones who gave you the envelope." Miguel hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. A knot formed in my stomach. That answer confirmed what I feared. The boy wasn't just an innocent messenger. He was a pawn in a much bigger network. And I, by stopping that morning, had ended up caught in the middle. We paid and went back to the van. The old man at the gas station looked at me again, as if he wanted to warn me about something but didn't dare. "Ma'am," he finally said, lowering his voice, "be careful on this road. Around here, everyone knows who comes in and who goes out. And some don't forgive." I stared at him, trying to figure out if he spoke from personal experience or because he had already noticed something about us. I nodded seriously and started the engine. As we were leaving town, Miguel tugged on the sleeve of my shirt. "Ma'am," he whispered. That man knew about me. I saw it in his eyes. Like he was expecting me to arrive. A shiver ran down my spine. Loba had never been one to believe in gut feelings, but that old man's look and Miguel's words left me unsettled. Because if they knew who he was in that town, it meant the network chasing him was bigger than I imagined. And getting to Nogales was no longer just a matter of kilometers. It was a matter of survival. The sun was pounding hard against the windshield when I decided to stop at the town plaza. It was a small place, with a low-bell white church and a couple of rusty benches around a dry fountain. I didn't want to keep driving at night, not after what had happened with the truck that shot at us. But I didn't want to stay in that town for too long either. I felt like every window, every shadow, was watching us. Miguel was restless. He rubbed his bare feet against the van's carpet, like he had an army of ants running up his legs. "I need air," he said suddenly, opening the door before I could stop him. I followed him immediately. The heat hit hard, mixed with the smell of dry earth and freshly made tortillas wafting from some nearby kitchen. That's when I saw him. A man in his 40s, with sun-darkened skin, a rolled-up plaid shirt, and a black hat, was sitting on a bench in front of the church. He was staring at us openly, with a crooked smile I didn't like at all. When Miguel noticed him, he froze in place. "Do you know him?" I whispered. The boy shook his head but went stiff as a board. The man stood up slowly and walked toward us with firm, deliberate steps. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said in a deep voice. "And good afternoon, champ. Heading to Nogales." I stared at him. I didn't like that he knew our destination without me saying a word. "We're just passing through," I replied, keeping my tone sharp. He smiled wider, as if my distrust amused him. "I'm a roadman too. Name's Reuben. If you're looking to get there quick and without trouble, I can show you a shortcut. Not all roads around here are safe." I felt something ignite inside me. This guy knew too much. Miguel clung to my hand, as if trying to hide behind me. "Thanks, but we know the way," I said, stepping back toward the van. Reuben raised his hands, as if to show he meant no harm. "I don't want to meddle where I'm not wanted, ma'am. I'm just saying, around here, people disappear easily. And it wouldn't be the first time I found abandoned trucks on these dirt roads." His gaze locked on Miguel. A look that wasn't casual. It weighed like a stone. The boy lowered his eyes, biting his lips. "Well then," Reuben said, tipping his hat slightly. "I'll be here for a while, in case you change your mind. Sometimes, the best route isn't the shortest one, but the one with the fewest eyes." We got back into the van. As I started the engine, a shiver ran down my spine. Reuben wasn't just some local man. He knew too much, and it was clear it wasn't a coincidence he was there. Miguel didn't say a word until we left the plaza behind. Then, in a low whisper, he said, "Senora Loba, that man talks just like them." My stomach knotted. Them, again. Every kilometer dragged us deeper into an invisible web that seemed to stretch everywhere. And I knew that sooner or later, we'd come face to face with the truth. The engine roared as we left the little settlement behind. In the rearview mirror, I could still see Reuben's silhouette, standing still in the plaza, watching us leave with that crooked smile that looked like both a promise and a threat at the same time. "Ma'am, do you think he'll follow us?" Miguel asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," I answered without taking my eyes off the road. "But I'm not planning on sticking around to find out." The boy hugged his backpack again, burying his face against it. I didn't say anything else, but inside I was boiling. That man hadn't approached us by chance. And even though we were driving away, I knew he had, somehow, already put our names on someone's list. The road narrowed, surrounded by dry bushes that barely moved in the hot wind. The sun beat down mercilessly, pulling mirages from the pavement, making everything look liquid, like I was driving over fire. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a distant sound. An engine. I tensed up. I slowed down slightly and sharpened my hearing. Yes, it was coming from behind. When I looked in the rearview mirror, my heart skipped a beat. A white pickup truck, different from the one that had chased us before but just as suspicious, was speeding toward us. "Miguel," I said softly, "get down. Don't let them see your face." He obeyed instantly, curling up until he was hidden under the dashboard. The white truck caught up within seconds. It had no front plates, and the windows were so dark it was impossible to see the occupants. It stayed behind us for a long stretch, like a predator studying its prey. This wasn't a coincidence. We were being hunted. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. I had two options: keep heading straight to Nogales and risk them catching us on the open road, or find an alternate route, even if it was more dangerous. I took a deep breath. "They're not taking you, Miguel. I promise," I muttered, more to myself than to him. I hit the gas. The white truck responded, accelerating too. The roar of engines filled the air. The road twisted between low hills. I knew that up ahead there was a stretch where the highway split in two. One path led to an old, almost abandoned bridge, and the other was the main road to Nogales. If they followed me, I'd have to decide there. Sweat slid down my palms. My heart pounded in my chest. Every time I checked the mirror, that truck looked closer, more relentless. And then, when I least expected it, the vehicle surged forward and pulled up alongside me. I caught a glimpse of the passenger's face. A man with a patchy beard, wearing a black cap, his eyes cold as stone. He smiled and raised his hand. The metallic flash of a gun blinded me under the sun. The world shrank to a single instant. The pistol's barrel gleamed like lightning, and time seemed to thicken, slow, suffocating. "Get down, Miguel!" I screamed with all my strength, ducking my head and jerking the wheel hard to the right. The shot exploded. Bang! The side window shattered with a sharp crack, covering the passenger seat with glimmering fragments like a rain of glass. Miguel screamed, curled up on the floor, his arms shielding his head. I kept maneuvering. Their truck tried to cut me off, but I floored the accelerator, hugging the edge of the dirt road that ran parallel to the main highway. The engine roared at its limit, my van shaking like it was about to fall apart, but I couldn't stop. Not now. "Don't move from there, Miguel," I ordered, swerving around rocks and potholes as the men fired again. Another shot shattered the side mirror, sparks flying. The white truck pulled up alongside me again, relentless. The passenger aimed once more. Then I saw my chance. Up ahead, the road narrowed between a row of cacti and a small embankment that dropped into a dry riverbed. If I turned at just the right moment, I could make them lose control. I tightened my grip on the wheel. I waited for the barrel to glint once more, for the man to get overconfident. And the instant he pulled the trigger, I turned the wheel with all my strength. The shot went wide, grazing the back door. My van tilted toward the embankment, the tires skidding over the gravel, but I managed to keep it upright. They didn't. The white truck tried to follow my maneuver but went in too fast. One of its tires slammed into a massive rock, and the vehicle bounced sideways. The crash was brutal, metal screeched, and within seconds, the truck flipped into the dry riverbed, rolling over until it was nothing but twisted wreckage. Dust swallowed everything. I kept driving, my heart racing, my eyes locked on the road. My hands were trembling, but I couldn't stop. Not for a second. Miguel lifted his head, his eyes red with fear. "Ma'am, are they dead?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, Miguel. And I don't care. The only thing that matters is that we're still alive." The boy stayed silent, hugging the backpack so tightly it looked like he wanted to merge with it. I pressed the accelerator. Nogales was closer now, yes, but I was certain of one thing. It wasn't a coincidence they had found us twice in less than a day. Someone was tracking us precisely. Someone who knew exactly where we were going and what we were carrying. And on that dusty road, with the broken glass and fear clawing at the back of my neck, I understood that this network was much bigger than I could imagine. Because to them, Miguel wasn't the only target anymore. Now I was marked too. The road fell silent again after the chaos of the crash. Only the tired roar of my engine filled the air, along with my ragged breathing and Miguel's muffled sobs as he stayed curled up on the floor. The windshield had a crack spreading slowly, as if reminding me every second that death had brushed right past us. I couldn't keep going like this. Not alone. I gripped the wheel, swallowing my fear. La Loba never asks for help, I told myself. But for the first time in years, I felt like my fangs weren't enough. That's when the CB radio, the one I always kept on to communicate with other delivery drivers on the road, crackled with static. "Loba, do you copy?" My heart skipped a beat. That voice. I knew it. I grabbed the microphone with trembling hands. "Who's this?" "It's Jaguar. I saw you pass earlier, heading north. You weren't answering, so I decided to follow your frequency. What the hell is going on? You sounded like you were being chased." Jaguar. A veteran delivery driver, one of those who seemed immortal. I'd seen him a few times at bases and truck stops, burly, always with a scruffy beard and a loud laugh. He never fully earned my trust, but he'd never given me a reason to doubt him either. I took a deep breath. "I ran into trouble on the road, Jaguar. And not the usual kind. I've got a kid with me, and some very dangerous people are after him." There was silence on the other end. A heavy silence. "I get it," he finally replied, his voice deeper now. "Tell me where you are. I'm coming to you." I looked at Miguel, who stared back at me with wide eyes, as if asking whether we could trust him. "Ma'am, do you know him?" he whispered. "Well enough to know he drives faster than any of us," I replied, though deep down, I wasn't so sure. Then Miguel spoke. "Don't trust him, Señora Loba," he said, his voice low but firm. "I know him." I looked at him, surprised. Miguel raised his gaze. His black eyes burned with restrained anger. "He was there, when they gave me the envelope. I saw him among them. I thought it was a dream, but no. He pointed me out too. He knows me." Silence exploded like a bomb. Jaguar dropped his cigarette, crushing it under his boot. His lips curved slightly into a crooked smile. "You're observant, kid." My blood turned to ice. Jaguar wasn't an ally. He never was. And now, trapped inside that rusty warehouse, with the doors behind him and Miguel trembling beside me, I realized we had walked straight into a trap. The echo of Miguel's words was still hanging in the air when I felt my blood boil. Jaguar had been hunting us from the start. Everything else had been theater. "So it was true," I muttered, slowly standing up. "I knew your story stank." Jaguar smiled calmly, like a predator that knows its prey has no way out. "Don't blame yourself, Loba. You're smart, but not smart enough. The kid was going to end up with me sooner or later. You just saved me the trouble." He took another step closer. Miguel stepped back, clutching the backpack against his chest, his eyes wide with fear. "What do you want with him?" I snapped, my voice hard. "Because you're not going to tell me this is all about an envelope." Jaguar tilted his head, watching me with a mix of mockery and pity. "The envelope is just an excuse, bait. What really matters is him." He pointed his chin at the boy. Miguel flinched. "I don't understand," I murmured. "What does he have that's worth so much?" Jaguar exhaled heavily, as if the truth weighed on him. "That kid is the key. His dad isn't waiting for him in Arizona like they made him believe. His dad is one of the ones who defected from the network. And before he disappeared, he hid something everyone wants back, information that could blow the whole operation wide open." I froze. "And the boy?" "His son is the password," Jaguar replied coldly. "He programmed it himself. A phrase, a word, something the kid doesn't even know he knows. But when his father sees him, hears him, he'll give up whatever's been hidden. And trust me, what that man's holding is worth more than 1,000 shipments." Miguel looked at me, pale, trembling. "I don't know anything, ma'am. I swear. I just want to see my dad." My heart clenched. Of course he didn't know. He was just a pawn on a board where adults played with lives like they were pieces in a game. Jaguar lit another cigarette, calm, as if everything was already decided. "So, Loba, don't make me hurt you. Hand over the kid. No one's going to blame you. They won't even know you had anything to do with this. You go back to your life, your routes, your packages. I'll take care of the rest." I looked at him with restrained fury. The idea of handing him over was absurd. That boy wasn't a package. He was a human being. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: trust. You know something, Jaguar? I said slowly, my voice low, like a growl. They call me La Loba for a reason. I don't give up my own. Jaguar let out a rough, mocking laugh. Then you just signed your death sentence. He made a small hand signal, and suddenly, I heard footsteps behind the metal sheets of the warehouse. 2 armed men emerged from the shadows, blocking the door. The air turned into a knife against my throat. It was just Miguel and me. And there were 3 of them. But if there's one thing I'd learned on the road, it's that wolves don't back down. The armed men moved slowly, closing in. The screech of their boots on the dry concrete pounded like a drum, marking each step closer to our sentence. Jaguar, calm and collected, adjusted his hat, savoring every second. Don't resist, Loba. No one will blame you if you hand over the boy. Just think about your daughter, about what you'd lose if you die here. A shiver ran down my spine. There was no way he should have known about my daughter, unless they had been following me for much longer than I thought. The poison in his words tried to break me, but instead, it gave me strength. I wasn't going to let Miguel become someone's merchandise. My eyes scanned the warehouse. Stacks of wooden crates, forgotten fuel drums, rusty tools, and an old forklift at the back. The idea struck like lightning. I leaned toward Miguel and whispered, "When I say so, you run. Don't look back. Understood?" He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes, but there was a determination there that broke my heart. One of the men stepped forward, aiming directly. The metallic click of his weapon filled the air. "That's enough," he said. In that instant, I threw myself toward the nearest crate and shoved it with all my strength. The wood cracked, collapsing right in front of the men. The crash sent up a thick cloud of dust, covering us like a curtain. "Run, Miguel!" I shouted. The boy bolted toward the forklift. I followed, darting through the shadows. The men yelled, firing blindly. Bullets tore through metal sheets, sent sparks flying, and echoed through the entire warehouse. Jaguar cursed loudly. "Catch them, you idiots!" We reached the forklift. I turned the key still left in the ignition, and the engine coughed, roared to life. With one hard push, I rammed the fuel drums toward the men. The barrels rolled and slammed against the floor. One burst open, spilling a thick stream that filled the air with the stench of gasoline. A split second of silence, and then sparks. A stray bullet hit metal. The explosion shook the entire warehouse. Fire roared to life, rising like a beast, flooding everything with an infernal glow. The men stumbled out, screaming, as the scorching heat consumed everything. I used the chaos to my advantage. I grabbed Miguel's hand and pulled him toward the side door, barely held shut with a rusty chain. With one kick, I burst it open, and we ran straight to the van. Behind us, through the flames, I saw Jaguar. Standing, smiling, with eyes burning hotter than the fire itself. "This isn't over, Loba," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos and freezing my blood. "The boy is mine, and sooner or later, you'll hand him over." I didn't reply. I just started the van and slammed the accelerator to the floor. The warehouse faded behind us, swallowed by the flames. The sky was starting to darken. Nogales wasn't far now. But with Jaguar still alive, I knew the real test was waiting for us on the other side. Because at that border, it wasn't just about crossing a line of land. It was a line between life and death. The road to Nogales was almost empty. The sky was painted in shades of red and purple, as if the sun itself knew the night would bring danger. The engine of my van roared tiredly, but there was no room to slow down. Miguel sat beside me, exhausted, his eyes swollen from crying so much, but still clutching the backpack tightly. He looked like a miniature soldier who had survived a war far too big for him. I drove with my teeth clenched. I couldn't stop thinking about Jaguar, about that devilish smile in the flames. He was alive, and sooner or later, he'd return. But I had to get there first. Nogales was less than an hour away. Suddenly, the highway opened into a lookout point. From there, you could see the twinkling lights of the city, like fallen stars scattered across the earth. Miguel sat up, his eyes glowing with excitement. "There it is, Señora Loba. There it is. My dad's waiting for me." His words cut through me like knives. I knew what awaited him wasn't just a reunion. It was the truth, the kind that could save us or destroy us. We reached the entrance to the city, where trailers were lined up to pass through checkpoints. The police were inspecting vehicles with flashlights, asking for papers. My heart lodged in my throat. If anyone had already sent word about us, this would be the end. I took a deep breath, placed the documents on the dashboard, and drove forward. The officer looked at me, then at the van, and finally at Miguel. "Is he your son?" he asked bluntly. Miguel lowered his head. I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I'm bringing him back. He was with his grandmother in Hermosillo." The officer stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, he nodded and waved us through. We drove a few more kilometers until we reached an old warehouse on the outskirts. Miguel had given me the address from memory, as if he'd repeated it 1,000 times in his dreams. The warehouse was dark, barely lit by a single hanging bulb at the entrance. I stopped the van, and before getting out, I looked at him. "Listen to me, Miguel. Your dad might be here. He might not. But no matter what happens, I'm not going to let them take you. Do you understand?" He nodded, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. We got out. The door creaked as it opened. Inside, from the shadows, a thin man appeared, with an unkempt beard and weary eyes. When he saw the boy, his eyes filled with tears. "Miguel." The boy dropped the backpack and ran to him. The embrace they shared tightened a knot in my throat. It was real. It was his father. "Dad, I brought it." "I brought what you asked for," Miguel said, holding out the envelope. The man took it, trembling, and opened it. Inside, there was no money, no weapons. Only a small USB drive wrapped in tape. He held it like it was gold. This is the proof. With this, I can bring them down." Then, a noise outside. Lights. Engines. Jaguar. The roar of trucks filled the air. The warehouse shook with the footsteps of men approaching. Miguel's father looked at me, desperation in his eyes. "We can't run. But if this crosses to the other side, they're finished." He handed me the USB. "Loba, you're the only one who can do this. You know the routes, you have the instincts. I'll stay behind to hold them off. Take Miguel and deliver him to the checkpoint. Ask for Aguila. He'll know what to do." I felt the world collapsing on me. Leave him behind? Condemn him? But in his eyes, I saw he wasn't asking for mercy. He was asking for trust. "Señora," Miguel said, tears streaming down his face, "promise me you won't let me go." A split second of silence, and then sparks. A stray bullet hit metal. The explosion shook the entire warehouse. Fire roared to life, rising like a beast, flooding everything with an infernal glow. The men stumbled out, screaming, as the scorching heat consumed everything. I used the chaos to my advantage. I grabbed Miguel's hand and pulled him toward the side door, barely held shut with a rusty chain. With one kick, I burst it open, and we ran straight to the van. Behind us, through the flames, I saw Jaguar. Standing, smiling, with eyes burning hotter than the fire itself. "This isn't over, Loba," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos and freezing my blood. "The boy is mine, and sooner or later, you'll hand him over." I didn't reply. I just started the van and slammed the accelerator to the floor. The warehouse faded behind us, swallowed by the flames. The sky was starting to darken. Nogales wasn't far now. But with Jaguar still alive, I knew the real test was waiting for us on the other side. Because at that border, it wasn't just about crossing a line of land. It was a line between life and death. The road to Nogales was almost empty. The sky was painted in shades of red and purple, as if the sun itself knew the night would bring danger. The engine of my van roared tiredly, but there was no room to slow down. Miguel sat beside me, exhausted, his eyes swollen from crying so much, but still clutching the backpack tightly. He looked like a miniature soldier who had survived a war far too big for him. I drove with my teeth clenched. I couldn't stop thinking about Jaguar, about that devilish smile in the flames. He was alive, and sooner or later, he'd return. But I had to get there first. Nogales was less than an hour away. Suddenly, the highway opened into a lookout point. From there, you could see the twinkling lights of the city, like fallen stars scattered across the earth. Miguel sat up, his eyes glowing with excitement. "There it is, Señora Loba. There it is. My dad's waiting for me." His words cut through me like knives. I knew what awaited him wasn't just a reunion. It was the truth, the kind that could save us or destroy us. We reached the entrance to the city, where trailers were lined up to pass through checkpoints. The police were inspecting vehicles with flashlights, asking for papers. My heart lodged in my throat. If anyone had already sent word about us, this would be the end. I took a deep breath, placed the documents on the dashboard, and drove forward. The officer looked at me, then at the van, and finally at Miguel. "Is he your son?" he asked bluntly. Miguel lowered his head. I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I'm bringing him back. He was with his grandmother in Hermosillo." The officer stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, he nodded and waved us through. We drove a few more kilometers until we reached an old warehouse on the outskirts. Miguel had given me the address from memory, as if he'd repeated it 1,000 times in his dreams. The warehouse was dark, barely lit by a single hanging bulb at the entrance. I stopped the van, and before getting out, I looked at him. "Listen to me, Miguel. Your dad might be here. He might not. But no matter what happens, I'm not going to let them take you. Do you understand?" He nodded, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. We got out. The door creaked as it opened. Inside, from the shadows, a thin man appeared, with an unkempt beard and weary eyes. When he saw the boy, his eyes filled with tears. "Miguel." The boy dropped the backpack and ran to him. The embrace they shared tightened a knot in my throat. It was real. It was his father. "Dad, I brought it." "I brought what you asked for," Miguel said, holding out the envelope. The man took it, trembling, and opened it. Inside, there was no money, no weapons. Only a small USB drive wrapped in tape. He held it like it was gold. This is the proof. With this, I can bring them down." Then, a noise outside. Lights. Engines. Jaguar. The roar of trucks filled the air. The warehouse shook with the footsteps of men approaching. Miguel's father looked at me, desperation in his eyes. "We can't run. But if this crosses to the other side, they're finished." He handed me the USB. "Loba, you're the only one who can do this. You know the routes, you have the instincts. I'll stay behind to hold them off. Take Miguel and deliver him to the checkpoint. Ask for Aguila. He'll know what to do." I felt the world collapsing on me. Leave him behind? Condemn him? But in his eyes, I saw he wasn't asking for mercy. He was asking for trust. "Señora," Miguel said, tears streaming down his face. "Promise me you won't let me go." I knelt down, took his shoulders, and looked him straight in the eyes. "I promise you, pup. I don't let go of my own." The noise outside grew louder. Shouts. Armed shadows closing in. I grabbed his hand, and we ran to the van. I started the engine with my soul on fire. Gunshots echoed behind us, lighting up the night. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Jaguar's silhouette entering the warehouse. His laughter thundered like a storm. I didn't look again. I just drove toward the border, toward the lights of the checkpoint, which looked like the last refuge in a world on fire. With every kilometer, I could feel destiny biting at our heels. But I wasn't going to stop. Not now. Because if there's one thing I've learned on the road, It's this: a wolf can lose blood, can lose sleep, can lose peace. But she never lets anyone take her own.